A$AP Rocky released his album Don't Be Dumb in January 2026. Right after the release, he sat down for an interview with DJ Akademiks. That combination alone, Rocky sitting across from Akademiks, caught a lot of people off guard, because Akademiks has spent years being one of the loudest voices in Drake's corner. He has been openly supportive of Drake through multiple controversies, multiple beefs, and multiple moments where the public was divided on Drizzy. And here was Rocky, a man who has clear tension with Drake, choosing to walk into that space and talk openly. Some fans thought Rocky was walking into a setup. Some thought Akademiks would spend the whole interview defending Drake and putting Rocky on the spot, but neither of those things happened. What came out of that conversation was something far more layered than a simple back and forth. Rocky spoke about his history with Drake, his feelings about J. Cole, his view on the Kendrick battle, and one specific moment from his own actions that he openly said he regrets. During the peak of the Kendrick Lamar and Drake conflict, J. Cole made a decision to step into the conversation. He released a track called 7 Minute Drill, which contained lines aimed at Kendrick. This was a major move. Cole has built his entire career on a reputation for staying above the noise, focusing on craft, and not engaging in public beefs. So for him to enter this particular one, at that level of intensity, with those two specific artists involved, it was significant. Fans took notice immediately. But within a very short window of time, Cole reversed course. He took the stage at a festival and publicly apologized. He said he did not want to be part of what was unfolding. He stepped back completely, acknowledged the track was a mistake in terms of timing and his own values, and removed himself from the situation. Now, the way Cole handled his exit was respected by a large portion of hip-hop fans and observers. He did not quietly delete anything. He did not pretend the track never happened. He stood in front of an audience and spoke honestly about his decision to pull back. That kind of public accountability is rare. But Rocky's focus during the Akademiks interview was not on what Cole did. His focus was on what Drake did, or more precisely, what Drake did not do after Cole made that move. Rocky's perspective was direct. He said that when you are aligned with someone the way Drake and Cole were aligned, they had publicly collaborated. They had been presented to the culture as part of the same circle. There is a certain responsibility that comes with that alignment. When Cole stepped back and took the public heat for jumping in and then pulling out, Rocky felt Drake should have stepped up in some way. Not necessarily to justify Cole's initial entry into the beef, but to acknowledge their relationship publicly, to give Cole some form of solidarity or protection in the moment. That did not happen. Drake kept moving. Cole's pullback was treated as Cole's own thing to deal with. And the public moment Cole had, which was awkward and uncomfortable by any honest measure, played out without Drake saying anything meaningful about it. Rocky used clear and direct language about this. He said, from a man's perspective, that is not how a genuine friendship or partnership is supposed to operate. He said he was giving his honest opinion, and people could take it or leave it. But his read of the situation was that Drake moved in a way that left Cole exposed. He called it moving like a female, which in his framing was about the style of the move, the indirectness, the absence of standing up front for someone who was standing for you. This is not a small thing in the context of hip-hop culture. Loyalty between artists, especially artists who have publicly aligned themselves, who have made music together, who have been perceived as a unit, carries real weight. When that loyalty is tested and it comes up short, people remember it. Rocky clearly remembered it, and he brought it up without being asked to go deep on Cole specifically. He volunteered this opinion because it was genuinely on his mind. Now, Akademiks responded to this by bringing up what he described as Drake's alleged perspective on the bigger picture of the Rocky beef itself. Akademiks was not reading from a statement. He was offering his understanding, based on his proximity to Drake's world over the years, of how Drake sees the situation with Rocky. The core of Akademiks' framing was this: Drake's frustration with Rocky is connected to Rihanna. Drake and Rihanna had a well-documented history together over multiple years. That history was public, emotional, and clearly meaningful to both of them in different ways. When Rocky and Rihanna became a couple and that relationship became public and serious, Drake, according to academics' reading, began to feel a certain way. An academic suggested that Drake's view was that some of Rocky's shots, over time, were more personal than Rocky was presenting them publicly. Rocky addressed this directly, and his response was grounded and calm. He said he is not the first man that his partner was with before he came into her life. He said that somebody predates him, and he has never spent any energy being bothered by that reality. He said that dwelling on who came before you is not something he has any patience for. He described it as insecure thinking, as sucker behavior in his words, and said that men who measure their worth against the people who came before them in a woman's life are wasting their time. He was not dismissive when he said this. He was clear. He separated his perspective from the idea that he was hiding some deeper motivation. He said his beef with Drake was not about Rihanna from his side. It was about Drake taking shots at him repeatedly over years. Shots that started, in Rocky's telling, right around the time he and Rihanna became official. Both men, through their respective voices in this interview, are presenting themselves as the one who was disrespected first. Rocky says Drake started throwing subliminal shots when Rocky's relationship with Rihanna became public. Drake's camp, as academics framed it, sees Rocky's moves as poking at something personal. Neither man is presenting himself as the aggressor. Both are presenting themselves as the one who was provoked. What makes this even more interesting is the detail Rocky shared about 2024's. He talked about Drake coming to Yams Day, a tribute event for the late ASAP Yams, who was deeply important to Rocky personally and to the ASAP mob as a whole. Drake showed up, and at that same time period, Drake gave Rocky a chain made in honor of ASAP Yams. He said he still cherishes it. That is not the language of someone who views Drake as simply an industry rival. That is the language of someone who remembers real warmth, real connection, real moments of friendship. And the fact that Rocky mentions this chain, not to soften his criticism of Drake, but to establish how deep the trust once was, tells you a great deal about why this whole situation carries the weight it does for him. He said plainly that he thought Drake was his friend. He thought they were genuine with each other. And then, without a direct conversation, without a clear moment of falling out, things shifted. Shots started coming. Subliminally, publicly, in songs, in interviews. And Rocky watched it happen, and eventually decided he was not going to keep absorbing it without responding. Academics did not fully side with Drake when Rocky was making his points. He listened. He challenged where he could. He offered Drake's perspective as a theory rather than as a fact. And he gave Rocky room to speak without turning the conversation into a defense of the Toronto rapper. That balance, unexpected from someone with academics' history of Drake support, is part of what made this interview worth paying attention to. Rocky's commentary on the Kendrick and Drake battle is one of the most carefully worded parts of the entire interview. Because he is in a complicated position, he has his own issue with Drake. He is not neutral, but he also has genuine respect for what both men did artistically during that period. And he expressed that respect without letting his personal situation with Drake color his entire assessment. When academics asked Rocky whether he was rooting for Kendrick during the battle, Rocky's answer was specific. He said it was not about rooting. He said Kendrick went crazy. That was his phrasing. And that from a purely performance standpoint, what Kendrick did was impressive. He said both Kendrick and Drake put on a real battle for hip-hop. He described it as good sportsmanship and acknowledged that the culture benefited from two artists of that stature going at each other directly, through music, with full effort on both sides. This is worth sitting with for a moment. Rocky was complimenting Drake's participation in a battle that Drake ultimately lost in the court of public opinion. He was not reducing Drake's effort or dismissing what Drizzy brought to that period. He acknowledged that Drake showed up, competed, and that the exchange itself was something hip-hop has not seen at that scale in a long time. That is a genuine credit, and it came from a man who has his own unresolved issues with Drake. Then Rocky drew a hard line. After the battle settled, after Not Like Us became one of the most played songs of 2024, after Kendrick performed it at the Super Bowl halftime show to a global audience, after the cultural verdict had clearly been handed down, Drake made a legal move. He pursued a defamation lawsuit connected to the content of Kendrick's music and the process by which it was distributed and promoted. Rocky looked at that and said the legal route was where things went in a direction he could not respect. He said, the battle was one thing. What happened after was a different matter entirely, and it crossed into territory he described as crazy. His position on this is rooted in a basic principle that hip-hop has always operated by. When you choose to compete, when you enter the space, put out music, go back and forth, publicly, you are accepting the rules of that competition. The audience judges, the culture responds, and whoever comes out on the other side with more momentum, more cultural resonance, more of the crowd behind them, they carry that moment. The other person absorbs the result and moves forward. Going to a courtroom after the music has already settled, the argument is, in Rocky's view, stepping outside of those rules. He was not speaking as a legal expert. He was speaking as someone who understands what it means to compete in this specific space under these specific expectations, and then to refuse the outcome by seeking a different arena where the rules are entirely different. It is also worth noting the full context of why Rocky spoke up during the Kendrick-Drake period in the first place. A lot of people assumed Rocky was jumping in on Kendrick's side, adding his voice to the pile-on against Drake. Rocky clarified this completely in the interview. He said the reason he said anything was specific. Drake, while on tour, made a public comment about Rihanna. Rocky said Drake declined to perform the song Work, the track Drake made with Rihanna. And the way Drake handled that moment in front of his audience felt like a direct shot at Rocky's partner. Rocky said he heard about it, processed it, and then decided he was going to say something. Not because Kendrick was winning, not because the timing felt right for a pile-on, but because someone publicly disrespected his girl, and he was not going to let that go unaddressed. He even imitated Drake's delivery of that moment in the interview, recreating how Drake reportedly said he did not want to perform that song anymore. Rocky did it in a way that was pointed and clear. He was not playing around. This was not a casual moment for him. He took the slight seriously and responded accordingly. This is an important clarification because it changes how you understand Rocky's verse on Show of Hands and his later bars on his own album. These were not moves made because Rocky was following a trend or aligning himself politically within hip-hop. These were personal responses to something that felt personal to him. The Kendrick-Drake battle was the backdrop. Rocky's reason for speaking was entirely his own. His respect for Kendrick's craft did not make him a participant in Kendrick's campaign against Drake, and his criticism of Drake's post-battle legal move did not come from a place of wanting to pile on. It came from a place of believing that the way you handle winning and losing in hip-hop says everything about who you are as an artist and as a person. Rocky gave both men credit for what they did in the ring. He just had a clear view on what happened when one of them tried to take it out of the ring entirely.